Hello, this is Horizon doing a drunk reading of Horizon and Bredell's Snogmageddon. This is going to be about a 66% cold reading because Bredell and I were co-writing this and I did not read most of what he actually wrote. And we're just going to go ahead and go through and sort of struggle through the strike through and the typos and all of the other various fun drunk things and attempt to make this some sort of actual enjoyable audio experience. Despite the fact that Manny had almost chewed her newest, if she was being honest with herself, her only friend into pieces, Starlight couldn't help but tear up a little bit as he bounded back into the Everfree. "Be free," she whispered, watching his fetching lion rump bound into the underbrush. It jiggled amiably as he ran. Starlight licked her lips hungrily, which was deleted, by the way. "Trixie will allow that he was an adequate assistant," the great and powerful Trixie said, levitating her hat off her head and checking the bag of bits hidden there within. Though he did insist upon union wages, which was somewhat surprising considering that the Everfree Forest is a right-to-work municipal zone. Starlight laughed uneasily. "Ha ha, a little uncomfortable with the conversation devolving into politics. Well, ha ha, you know manticores, right?" "Not if Trixie can help it," Trixie said with an easy laugh, and then her face sobered. "However, Trixie must admit, without him there would have been no moonshot manticore mouth dive, and thus no grand return of Trixie to the equestrian stage, and no positive full free press reviews, and no free drinks at the Las Pegasus Marriott when Trixie attended the Stage Magicians Convention." Starlight's mouth dropped open. "Wow, Trixie," she whispered. "I'm almost proud. That very nearly wasn't racist at all." "Trixie tries," Trixie said, in something that, for the great and powerful Trixie, very nearly resembled humility. A flush spread across Starlight's face. "That's, you know—" Her voice dropped from its existing whisper to near Fluttershy levels of social withdrawal. "Kinda hot." Trixie's eyebrow lifted. "I beg your pardon?" "Nothing," Starlight said, her cheeks bursting into metaphorical flame, as opposed to literal flame, which was my other story about Adventure Clyde, crossed out, as she found herself struggling with unfamiliar feelings which she had never felt before, which was why they were unfamiliar. She cleared her throat, trying to halt the spinning of her mental wheels. Clearly this was a consequence of finally making friends for once in her life, and the fluttering of her heart was just one of those friendship things. Right? Right? Trixie glanced over at the manticore's fetchingly retreating butt for a moment, and then shrugged. "Whatever. Trixie didn't actually care about your opinion anyway. She was simply asking because she was being polite, as she has heard that friends do to each other." Starlight's cheeks felt like they went from fiery to plasma. "So hot," she thought, and then swallowed and ground her hoof into the dirt, trying to focus. "Well, Trixie, I appreciate that. What I meant to say was that you should be friendly. That's what Twilight keeps trying to teach me. I'm learning. I totally am." She swallowed again, her throat bone dry, and tried to deflect the conversational ball back into Trixie's court. "Are you?" Trixie would think that was self-evident. "Ha ha, yes, of course," Starlight said, and was fortunately saved from further conversational flailing by the burst of flames that heralded the arrival of a friendship scroll. She caught it reflexively in her hornglow, turned away from Trixie, and unrolled it, thinking only too late that that would let Trixie read it over her shoulder, and then wondering why she felt so strongly about that possibility, and then wondering why she was overanalyzing her feelings rather than reading the scroll, which was clearly about some sort of important friendship problem that was more important than whatever friendship feelings she was feeling about her friend, and that just set off a wave of self-doubt that left her paralyzed until Trixie stepped forward and snatched the scroll from her. "Twilight Sparkle wants you at the castle," Trixie said and scowled. "Twilight Sparkle wants you at the castle? What about—" Another scroll appeared in midair, and somehow managed to fling itself at Trixie's face at something approximating terminal velocity for something as light and voluminous as a scroll. Starlight marveled, for a moment, at Spike's control, and then wondered whether Trixie had somehow pissed off the baby dragon, or whether this was some sort of Twilight's passive aggressiveness by proxy thing. "Correction," Trixie said, spitting out parchment, because that's what scrolls are actually made of. Paper is pressed from trees, while papyrus is made from the papyrus plant, Cyperus papyrus, and Equestria's scroll-making technology, since it is as anachronistic as the rest of the show, was using technology that was not totally incongruous in only the way that the magical aesthetic of a world of talking ponies designed as a mechanism for toy sales to 5-year-old human females can be, and I'm not even sure where the hell this sentence was going, especially since parchment not equals papyrus, and that apparently made Trixie a carnivore, which just made her even hotter in Starlight's eyes, because this is that kind of fic. Twilight apparently wants us at the castle. Where was this even going? I don't care. Bradell broke the fourth wall in scene 3, so I might as well get started early, the author said, and then promptly left again so he could get back to the story, but not before taking another drink. And then there's a whole bunch of completely fourth wall breaking garbage ending in a F7U12 rage face image. Anyway, so there was this thing going on with Trixie and Starlight, and they were trying totally to avoid invoking the trope of alien shipping syndrome, alien brainworms by name, even though this is totally an excuse plot to get them together. So, fuck it. Trixie cleared her throat as the fourth wall was repaired, and stared at the still retreating butt of the shapely manticore, who had been running to get away from the story for over half an hour of subjective time now, but still had not yet cleared the scene. Oh, Manny, you poor thing, there is no escape. Where the hell was I? Someone please help. This is all going to get strike through, but for now I'm lost and marooned in an island of no context. Thank you. So, as Trixie had previously noticed before being interrupted with the whole digression about paper and papyrus and possibly also parchment, Trixie said imperiously, we were being summoned to the castle. We were? Starlight said, and then threw her inhibitions to the wind. Oh, Trixie, you sexy beast, I have never wanted any pony so much as I have wanted you at this moment. You sexy, sexy beast. And she stopped as she realized she was repeating herself, and that wasn't making her look particularly cogent. I want you. She decided to stop while she was still ahead. Of what? She didn't know, but she was still clearly ahead of something. Trixie blinked. Then her muzzle slowly spread into a smile. There's a whole bunch of crossed-through stuff right there. The two ponies stared into each other's eyes with sappy grins. Oh, Trixie, I love you, Starlight whispered. I love me too, Trixie crooned back. And then they made out, in the ways that ponies make out. Ask Lyra and Bonbon if you don't understand, because they are really good friends. And then they went to Twilight's castle. That's supposed to be castle, I'm sure. Skipping forward, past strike through. Oh, good, you're both here. This is after a scene break, by the way, so scene break. And we're going to stop the recording for a moment. Snogmageddon, Chapter 2, the chapter after the first scene break. Oh, good, you're both here. That will speed up our timetable quite a bit. Twilight paced through the hall of the Friendship Castle as she spoke. Yeah, Starlight said. We were just, planning Trixie's next show when we got Spike's message. Trixie blushed. Starlight glanced at her friend and then quickly away. So, what's up? You said you need our help with something? Yes, I think I've come up with a great idea for your next friendship lesson, Starlight, and I want you to get started on it right away. Twilight sat down at the map table and began leafing through a heavy tome. Starlight watched, waiting patiently for Twilight to finish her thought, which she did not do. As the silence stretched, Starlight found it harder and harder to avoid looking at Trixie, at those soft blue lips, at her silky mane so gentle against her skin when she brushed a hoof through it, at her... Twilight, did you want to explain the lesson? Starlight wiped a bead of sweat off her cheek where it had been slowly rolling down her face. Twilight looked up as if she'd been startled. Oh, yes, so you have two friends now, Starlight. Well, two, and me and the other elements of... Well, they're not the elements of harmony anymore, so I suppose I should call them Twilight. Starlight felt her eyes begin to slide back toward Trixie. Sorry, yes. So you've now made two new friends. Congratulations. Twilight beamed at her student. Your next lesson is group social activities. Group social what? Now you need to all hang out together. The great and powerful Trixie does not, Trixie huffed. And you know what? I think I'm just going to start giving her a Scottish accent now. Does not hang out. One does not simply hang out with Trixie. Twilight resumed, looking at her tome. Starlight turned to Trixie and spoke in a stage whisper for the benefit of the readership. But if we go on a friendship quest, we'll probably have plenty of time too, you know. Trixie does not know. You know? Oh, well, yes, Trixie might be comfortable with that arrangement. Trixie's cheeks turned lilac as she blushed. Okay, Twilight, we'll do it. So what's the plan? Twilight looked up from her conveniently distracting tome. Oh, well, I guess just go head up and visit Sunburst. Her cheeks flushed. Sunburst. She cleared her throat. You know him. Starlight's eyebrow inched up. You know? Twilight's eyes shot open. No, I don't know, and I certainly don't know what I don't know, which makes it double blind. We could use this for, experiments. Her eyes seemed to glaze over. Experiments. Yeah, well, I guess we'll just be going then, Twilight. Starlight motioned with her hoof, and she and Trixie turned and left the great hall. Experiments! Trixie laughed as they made their way out of the castle. Trixie thinks that if Twilight wants to do the experiments she looks to be thinking of, Twilight would do well to procure a room for her and Sunburst first. Starlight sighed. Innuendo works a lot better when you don't try to sound hyperverbal, Trixie. With a sigh of her own, Trixie hung her head. Trixie knows. Innuendo is not Trixie's strong suit. Starlight smiled. Well, we'll just have to see what we can do about that. They snogged briefly as they exited the castle. It wasn't enough to justify the title yet. Then they both walked to the Ponyville train station where Horizon would continue the story. Chapter 3, the chapter after a whole bunch of strike-through text, including a bunch of stuff about Skywriter. And I just felt like I should mention that because, hello Skywriter, you're awesome. Skywriter Tiara OTP. On the train north to the Crystal Empire, Starlight and Trixie actually did manage to get a room, because that's what you do when you're two ponies in love. Or lust. I mean, really, Starlight's new to all of this, and so is Trixie, so what's the difference? These ponies wouldn't know love if it ran up and bit them on the flank. Ooh, new story idea. Oh, Starlight! Oh, Trixie. We shouldn't. No, we shouldn't. But I want to. Oh, so do I. The door to their private compartment slammed open, revealing Twilight in her new rarity-designed adventuring outfit. So, how's the friendship going over here? Twilight, Starlight blushed as she turned toward the door. What are you doing here? Well, I always oversee your friendship lessons, don't I? I mean, you must have assumed I'd be coming along. Twilight marched into the private compartment, a collection of travel bags floating behind her in a magenta thermic field. I suppose, Starlight responded. I guess maybe I didn't think through enough of the implications of a friendship lesson episode. Trixie thinks you are breaking the fourth wall too much already, new best friend, Trixie enunciated, because enunciated is like the worst sadism, and haha, Horizon is going to have to clean this all up afterward. Yes, anyway, I will be accompanying you to make sure your friendship lesson goes by the book, Twilight said, and not at all because of any other reason. A whistle blew, and the train pulled into the Crystal Empire train station. Because seriously, people, we need to move this plot along. I want to make a Beavis and Butthead plot joke. Plot. But that's really beneath me. Well, not me, I suppose, because I'm the reader and I just did. But I'm cold reading this, so deal. Time to take another drink and feel shame at how far I've fallen in life. Yeah. Shame, shame. Sunburst was waiting for them when they detrained. It's like deplaning, except with a train. Seriously, how is this not a word? Experiments, Twilight mumbled to herself. Hi, Starlight, Sunburst exclaimed. It's so good to see you again. Starlight ran to Sunburst and gave him a quick hug. You too! I missed you, even though you're a minor character and probably won't come into the story again until the season finale, which is a real shame because so many people liked you and you were pretty awesome, and I know for a fact Bradell really dug you and wants to see more of you. Starlight! Trixie thinks you're letting your authorial intent show again, or you're letting someone's authorial intent show. Trixie thinks you should watch out for that. Trixie, your suggestions are wise and perspicacious, as I would expect from my very good friend, Starlight said, completely abandoning any pretense to correct character voice. Experiments, Twilight resumed. Twilight has a new friendship lesson for us, Sunburst, Starlight said. Oh? Sunburst responded academically. What is that? She thinks we should engage in a group activity with Trixie, Starlight said, glancing sideways at Luna, who was inexplicably there with them for reasons that were pretty clearly unrelated to foreshadowing. Honestly, she was just, touristing or something. She was wearing a giant foam hat with the Crystal Empire hoofball team and lugging around a giant luggage bag with a bunch of tiny U's, which were totally legal for export under the Crystal Empire's new anti-slavery laws, because after all, sheep weren't actually equine. I think she might be violating the fourth and fifth geek social fallacies, or I would if I knew about them, but let's not worry about that and stick with the plot, as bare bones as it may be. That sounds like a good plan, Starlight, Sunburst responded. Damn it, I didn't mean to resolve that. I wanted to respond to it. Sorry, Oliver, said Bradell. That sounds like a good plan, Starlight, Sunburst responded. What group activity does she think we should try? Going to see a movie, Twilight said much too quickly. Trixie turned towards Twilight. Trixie is worried that you may have ulterior motives here, Twilight Sparkle. In fact, thanks to Trixie's communicative pathway with one of the authors, Trixie is well nigh sure of this. Twilight blushed but said nothing. So I guess we're supposed to see a movie? Sunburst said. But Mrs. Harshwinny was there and all bets were off. The great and powerful Trixie objects to being included in such a ham-hounded narrative, Trixie said. Bradell, you can do better than this, please. The great and powerful Trixie has standards. The author regretfully conceded the point. Well, one of the authors did. The other author was probably busy trying to get Trixie and Starlight to snog in the first scene, because that author is really slow and can't get to the point. Shots fired. Yes, thank you, Bradell. Experiments, Twilight prompted. So I guess you're supposed to see a movie, Sunbutt said. I'm kind of interested in Captain America Civil War. What do you guy girls mares think? Trixie thinks you're drawing ideas from outside Equestria again and that you should be more careful about your cognitive bleed-through. Hey, Sunburst said, I heard there's a new Sapphire Shores movie called, Glitter. Sure, why don't we go to see that? Because I don't think Bradell is going to come up with any better titles for us right now. Fix it in post, Horizon, fix it in post, said somebody who wasn't Sunburst or Twilight, so probably Starlight Glimmer, because Trixie doesn't talk like that. At this point, Bradell comes back and tries to figure out what his drink-addled mind was up to. Bradell doesn't actually want to read anything he's already written, Hemingway he is not, so he just gives up and decides to continue anyway, also leaving spelling mistakes in places really fracking hard when you're neurotic as I am. Ow, no, Mr. Parentheses, qua. Fuck it. Okay, let's do this thing. Twilight said, experiments. So we're going to see Glitter? Starlight asked. Well, it's a mare movie, but I'd be okay with that. Well, it's a mare movie, but I'd be okay with that, said Sunburst. Yes, let's go see Glitter, Twilight said far too enthusiastically. I get to sit next to Sunburst because experiments. Trixie sees no problem with this, Trixie said as she hid a very significant look towards Sunburst, note towards Starlight. Stupid S names. Trixie wants to bang Starlight, not Sunburst. Most of that was crossed out. It's okay. You don't have to deal with it. Really, I'm here for you. It's okay. Just sink into the story and we'll go on. Scene skip to the movie theater. Chapter 4, the chapter after Chapter 2. Scene skip to the movie theater. Then the lights dimmed and the projector started up, which was a little weird because they hadn't actually traveled to the movie theater yet, and they were just standing out in the train station at the Crystal Empire, and for some reason the horizon had rolled up to reveal a giant white screen. That had all sorts of existential implications. That Starlight, is she still our prospective character? Bradell says yes, so let's go with that. Didn't really want to think about, because she was much more focused on the way that Trixie's body moved underneath yoga pants, which Starlight was sure that she was someday going to invent, even though right now she was naked except for the cape and the hat. Glitter, the screen said. A film by Iron Will. It was in black and white because Twilight Sparkle liked pretentious films. It was also a silent film, and there was a title card with the first sentence of Milltown's Paradise Lost, or the departure from the Garden of the Three Tribes under the rule of the Alicorn Selefthia, including the defending S, because this is old-style writing, and that is how we indicate such. The first book proposes, first and brief, the whole subject, Pony's disobedience, and the loss thereupon of paradise wherein he was placked. Then touches the prime cause of his fall, the serpent, or rather discord in the serpent, who, revolting from Faust and drawing to his side many legions of Pegasi, was by the command of Faust driven out of heaven with all his crew into the great deep. Starlight wasn't entirely sure what that had to do with anything, but it certainly sounded deep. Deep like profound, not deep like the great deep which the title card had mentioned. Then the movie went on to show a moving image of Sapphire Shores doing a grainy backflip, which is a reference that will make sense to like 3 readers, and it went on from there into a scene with sound, and then gradually started to develop into color, and all of it was to some sort of crazy 1970s bleep bloop techno soundtrack, because apparently glitter is the pony Koyanis Quatsi, and it ended in a sequence of a giant pirate ship sailing toward the moon and another ship coming toward them with Nightmare Moon at the helm, and then there was a giant SFM fight, and it was exactly like that one pony video, which I'm hoping someone in the Peanut Gallery will link for me so that I don't have to stop for internet research. There actually is a link in the sidebar comments, and it would be completely retarded for me to say that out loud, so hopefully Bradell in post will actually produce a YouTube link at this part in the video so you can click on it and see what we're talking about. Anyway, there is some strike-through text here talking about Skywriter again, because, hi Skywriter. Actually, I'm just going to read this. Is Skywriter a thing? Is he a character in the story now? Not really, Bradell says, and he strike-through'd all of it, which is making me think that there maybe should be a House of Leaves sort of meta thing where the strike-through comments are a second level of the story that makes more sense than the actual plot. In comments, one of our collaborators says, I would totally collaborate on something like that done sober. Of course, that's all strike-through'd with the note Alt-Shift-5 success. And for some reason, Alt-Shift-5 success is not strike-through'd, so apparently that's part of the actual story. I'm sorry. Anyway, Twilight pulled back from watching the movie and glanced over at Sunburst, her cheeks heating. She scooted her hoof over toward his armrest and bumped his arm, by which I mean his foreleg, and smiled at him. Sunburst smiled back at Twilight in an ambiguous way that probably meant he was in love with someone else, even though Twilight was too smitten to notice that in her mental state. Meanwhile, glitter continued to play on the screen, and Sapphire Shores explored the moon, and there were adorable moon bat ponies that became her sidekicks as she explored in a sequence that had a lot of sublimated sexual imagery. Starlight shifted in her seat and made moony eyes at Trixie, and Trixie was trying to pretend like she wasn't interested in the movie, so she did catch Starlight's glance and smiled at her in return. It was totally dark, so they made out, while everyone around them pretended not to notice, and then the scene on the screen shifted to Sapphire Shores making out with Luna, which made it a little bit awkward for the audience. Trixie and Starlight snuck in a kiss, and their muzzles pressed together, and Trixie and Starlight shared each other's breath in a romantic way, and then their muzzles parted, connected by a little trail of drool, in a way that wasn't quite so romantic, except for some reason seems to have become iconic in romance stories. Seriously, what the hell is up with romance writers who do the trail of drool thing? Do they think it's like the spaghetti and Lady and the Tramp? It's not, it's fucking drool. It's got all the sexuality of becoming blood sisters, except none of the actual symbolism. Saliva is basically just mouthwater, and it doesn't even work that way. Apparently romance stories bend the rules of chemistry and saliva is like mouth glue or something. Well, fine. Trixie and Starlight are now indelibly connected by a string of freaking mouth glue. I hope you're all happy. Luna and Sapphire made out on the screen, and that was far more hot than the characters are here to read about, so I'm going to describe that instead. Sapphire closed her eyes and craned her muzzle forward toward the Princess of the Night. Subtle music played in the background, and a soft breeze stirred up. The moon was cresting just over the horizon, and they were standing in a field of azaleas in full bloom, and petals from cherry blossoms drifted down through the scene, and I don't care that that's an anachronism, because romance is about the evocation of sensations, not literal factual correctness, you humorless prig. Oh, Sapphire, Luna breathed, even though you are as a mayfly to my eternal lifespan, I love you with every fiber of my being. And Trixie's heart fluttered, and she pulled her head back, and the little strand of drool stretched, and Sunburst, who was sitting between them, squirmed uncomfortably in his seat. Princess, Sapphire said as she blinked her heavily makeup-encrusted eyes. Mes petites chéries, or at least the singular version thereof. You are my night, my stars, my every waking moment. Luna blinked. Thou art nocturnal? Then I love thee all the more. And she lunged in for an even deeper kiss, tongue probing toward the back of the singer's neck. Sapphire moaned deep in her throat, hooves clamping around Luna's withers, and melted into her embrace, and a triumphant orchestral flourish swelled, and tears came to everyone's eyes. Except for Luna, who was in the audience, and who was just thinking that perhaps she should have been a little less enthusiastic with the tongue, because Sapphire had sort of gagged and not been super happy after the end of filming, and that verisimilitude hadn't really come across on camera as well as she'd hoped, and she wasn't really that much into mares anyway, no matter what canon says. Starlight, meanwhile, was starting to get a little bit concerned about that trail of drool that was connecting her to Trixie's muzzle. It was a little bit erotic and a lot kinky, and also somewhat physically impossible, which she thought that, after messing around with Star Swirl's master-level magic, she'd come to terms with, but this was on a whole different level. She tried to deal with it by leaning in and kissing Trixie again, hoping that maybe that would undo it, but instead when she pulled her muzzle back, it just connected them with a second strand of drool. Trixie seemed to be enjoying it, though, so Starlight put up with it for her sake. Sunburst squirmed even more and limboed underneath the drool strands to get out of his seat, and shuffled awkwardly off to the restroom, trying not to think about his childhood friend and the unbreakable drool of love that was now connecting her to another pony. And failing. He wondered if perhaps someday he might get a drool strand of his own, and then decided that probably that wasn't to be. Just like some unicorns ascended into alicornhood, but the vast majority of unicorns lived lives of quiet desperation, in the words of Harry David, Pontification of Thoreau. At that thought, he burst into tears. Twilight Sparkle's heart yearned to follow him, and most of the rest of her did too, but she would have had to get up from her seat to do so, and the movie wasn't over, and that would have been rude, even though she really, really wanted to. That's when Sapphire and Luna, the on-screen version at least, started moaning lustfully and reaching toward parts of each other that aren't covered by the Hays Code, which is mercifully when the movie was interrupted by Manny bursting through the screen like a facehugger from the chest of reality. Miles away, Pinkie Pie winced, wondering for a moment if she was being upstaged, which she was. Luna, Manny roared with the heart-rending roar of a manticore in love. I need you with every fiber of my being. I need you. Every pony in the audience thought that he was talking about the Luna on screen, but Manny was actually talking about the Luna in the audience, who nobody else had noticed until now. Except for you, because you're awesome and you're smart enough to pick up those sorts of subtle cues from the fourth wall-breaking narration earlier in the story. Speaking of which, BRB, I'm going to add Luna into some of the earlier scenes. Crossed out, because we're subtle like that. Luna shrunk in her seat a little bit. Since that stopped the movie, what with Manny bursting through the screen, Twilight figured that it was intermission and therefore it was okay to get up from her seat. She dashed out into the lobby and chased Sunburst into the stallion's bathroom, at which point she burst in on his stall, causing a slightly awkward moment, followed by an even more awkward moment, followed by her shooing everyone else out of the restroom with her princess powers, and then a scene which we cannot adequately display in a T-rated fic. Oh God, what is my life? Chapter 5, Actual Snogmageddon. So, now that Twilight and Sunburst have totally done it, we need to figure out why Snogmageddon happens. Well, that was surprising, Starlight said. Who would have thought Manny the Manticore was in love with Princess Luna? Actually, if you correlate all the information we know about him, which admittedly it isn't much, Twilight said, it was a pretty reasonable supposition. I mean, Manny's the tsundere type, same as she is, and the great and powerful Trixie thinks that discussion of concepts like tsundere are not appropriate for pony stories. Can we really assume that all our readers understand concepts pioneered in Japanese animation? Trixie makes a fair point, Sunburst said. Anyway, I don't think this was all that unexpected. Twilight turned toward the Manticore and gave him a small smile. Though unless Princess Luna shows up, it's probably not a big deal. Princess Luna showed up. Twilight Sparkle, there is an emergency in Canterlot that needs your urgent attention. Manny ran forward, sinking down onto one knee and pulling out a small ring box. Luna, heart of my heart, light of my life, you are more beautiful than all the other creatures in Equestria. The glory of your night is the whole of my existence. I cannot live without you. Please, Luna, moonward, will you consent to marry me? Luna gasped. Forsooth, I never realized that manticores could be so elegant. Verily I say unto you, thee... Manny, Twilight prompted. Verily I say unto thee, Manny, that long have I longed for a companion to share eternity with me. And lo, you shall be granted immortality with me, as my consort who reigns in glory over the night. And I shall learn to love thee, because this is a really terrible story for romance and gender stereotypes, even though I'm a mayor who ought to have a lot of agency and power. But Bradell is kind of a terrible writer when he's drunk, so fuck it, sure I'll marry you. Forsooth, said Luna Scottishly. And you thought that I was just screwing up and giving Luna Trixie's accent. No, it says right there. In the story, she said, Scottishly, thank you very much. Twilight dusted off her hooves. Okay, now that that's been resolved. Experiments. Experiments, Sunburst concurred. You know, I've got some wow, what is the spelling in this paragraph even? Let's try that again. Experiments, Sunburst concurred. You know, I've ought some rather obscure volumes that were purportedly penned by Starswirl the Bearded in my private library, if you wild like to peruse them. Boy, would I, said Twilight. I love perusing works by Starswirl the Bearded. I especially love perusing his more esoteric works, Twilight bulged. Maybe we can go looking for those more esoteric works together, Subvernst said with a wink, because Sunburst is a total pimp. I think that's an excellent idea. Let me put it in my schedule. Oh, come on, Twilight, said Starglitter, or whatever her name is. You know what you want. Just go get a room and do it, and let us keep the story from becoming rated by keeping it off screen. Seriously, what was her name? Then Twilight and Sunburst exited, while not pursued by bears, nor while on the shores of Bohemia, to totally get their freak on together in a private hotel room somewhere. And if you don't find my anodyne statement of this fact to be sexually arousing, then I don't know why you're bothering to read this fic or pretend you like mature fics, because this is totally as good as you're going to get from most mature fics, because even professional authors really suck at writing porn. Seriously, said Bradell, have you read The Good German? I've listened to the audiobook and it's got the worst sex scene I've ever heard around the second tape. It's really painful. If you want quality porn, you should be reading highly regarded femfiction authors who write porn, because the people who write this stuff professionally tend to be really bland, and there's absolutely no reason why I'd know this information, so shut up. Then Bradell stopped invading the narrative of his own story to provide digressions on the state of professional erotic fiction, because 1, why would he do things like that, and 2, why would he want to associate himself with knowing about things like that publicly? Experiments, Twilight said. Experiments, Sunburst agreed. And the two went off to discuss their theories of analytical logic and semantic implication in private. Wait, Starlight protested. We can't finish our friendship lesson without a third friend with whom to engage in mutual social activities. Trixie smiled and gave Starlight a shy look. Trixie, you're not implying. The great and powerful Trixie is absolutely implying what you think she's implying, Trixie responded. What social activity could be better than that? Starlight, for the first time, found herself blushing furiously. But that's not how proper ponies behave, Trixie. Trixie cares not one whit for how proper ponies behave. Trixie understands what Twilight Sparkle means when she talks about experiments, and that distant look she gets when she talks about Sunburst. Trixie feels the same way when she thinks about you, her best friend, Starlight Glimmer. Starlight Glimmered smiled shyly. Well, I feel the same way when I think about you too, Trixie. Then perhaps the great and powerful Trixie and the beautiful and really sexy Starlight Glimmer should find a private space in which they can, Trixie blushed, in which they can experiment in much the same manner that Trixie believes Twilight is experimenting with Sunburst. And Manny is experimenting with Luna, Starlight responded sultrily, narrowing her eyes sultrily, except I've already used that adjective, except it's an adverb. An adverb, so more like sexily. Can you just picture them? Manny's well-toned flanks swaying as he strides forward to mount her, and Trixie cleared her throat, which made the drool that was still linking them tremble attractively, and Starlight's train of thought derailed on the drool, in a way that wasn't entirely metaphorical. Train from Crystal Empire derails on Drool Strand, the newspaper the next morning read, 57 dead. Starlight would have a great deal of cause to feel guilty about that later, and it would cause her sleepless nights well into her 50s. But for now, while love was clouding her mind, it would just be another think for future Starlight to deal with, which was a lot less metaphorical for someone who knew all of Star Swirl's time magic than it was for Spike and his ice cream. And thus did Starlight unintentionally learn the most important friendship lesson of all. When you fall in love with your best friend, 57 people die. Don't fall in love with your best friend. And then Starlight and Trixie kissed, and the kiss was one of the most romantic of all time, eclipsing even the kiss shared by Wesley and Buttercup in William Goldman's The Princess Bride. Trixie failed to learn this importante Frenchie lesson for now, but she would learn. Oh, yes, she would learn after 57 ponies died from the kiss she shared with Trixie under the guise of experimentation. So here's your moral, kids. Don't experiment with alternate lifestyles because people will die. The authors of the story categorically refuse to endorse this moral and encourage readers to experiment with alternate lifestyles. The fact that the story is so patristically against alternate lifestyles is not a feature of the story that the authors support or endorse, and it should not be taken as a reflection of real-world outcomes. People will not die when you embrace alternate lifestyle choices, usually, unless you pick really bad alternate lifestyle choices like deciding that you're probably a vampire and biting people's necks and sucking out all their blood. That's probably not a good lifestyle choice. But honestly, falling in love with your best friend is probably fine, especially if he or she appears to return the sentiment. In all likelihood, 57 people will not die when you follow up on this, probably, but it still doesn't hurt to be careful. Letter O, number 7. And that was Snogmageddon by Horizon Burdell, read by Horizon, written by both of us, regretted by both of us, also regretted by me, which means I regretted it twice. I'm allowed to do that because I regretted it once when I wrote it and once when I'm reading it. Have a lovely night, and don't let 57 people die.